Maybe he regretted telling me he loved me. It was a bit soon, but it was there, the love. I had known it too, but only he had been brave enough to say it aloud. Rap, 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 rap. There was a loud tapping at my window, loud, incessant noise interrupting my pondering. I jumped, my hand clutching at my heart as I peered out the pane. There was someone out there, a thin figure in the frame. Rap, rap, rap. I walked to the window, my eyes failing in the darkness blanketing the front yard, and suddenly, there was Edward's face in the glass. I gasped, taken aback by his presence as I opened the window as wide as I could. Edward. What are you doing here? Are you okay? He climbed in silently, his white-collared shirt a bit crumpled, and he smoothed the wrinkles as he moved into my room, seating himself on the edge of my bed, and placing his head in his hands. Edward. Esme told me about Alice. Have you heard anything yet? I sat down next to him, placing my hand on his arm, his skin cool from the night air. He looked up, his green eyes trembling, and I had my answer.
She's gone, Bella. Just gone. I don't know what to do. I'm just so lost, so alone. I've never been alone before, ever. With a twin, there's always someone, always Alice there with me, she's always been there. And now she's not.
Edward laid his head on my chest and I ran my fingers through his hair, his hands wrapped tightly around my waist as I kissed his forehead. His hands gripped my nightgown and pulled me closer to him. I bent my head to kiss his lips, his mouth hesitant at first, yet I urged him on with mine, pulling at his lips with my own until finally he responded, his mouth slowly enveloping me. His lips moved slow and deliberate, as if he were savoring each lick, each taste, relishing in the union of our mouths, as he never had before. There was something in this kiss, something smoldering and fluid, his need fluttering through me and vibrating off every push of his tongue. I slid my hands up his neck, pulling him closer as his arms gently guided me to lay on my back. His hand glided over my breast, massaging the flesh through the thin cotton material, before bringing his mouth to lick my neck. I pulled at his messy hair, the need to feel him inside me grumbling deep in my core. Suddenly, I felt his teeth on the tender crook of my neck, a sharp pain searing into my skin, and I yelped, the pain igniting a fury within and causing my hips to writhe against him. My hands pulled at my nightgown, untying the top to reveal the perked flesh of my breasts. I rolled and twisted my nipples between my fingers, begging his mouth to find them, the desire dampening between my legs as I rubbed my thighs together in search of the much-needed friction. Edward pulled away from my neck, his hands finding mine, his lips kissing the flesh of my breast, his tongue looking at the rosy hardened skin, and I groaned as his mouth made contact. He pulled away, staring at my hands, my face, back to my breasts. His fingers trailed light paths up my thighs, his thumbs slipping and sliding. As he rubbed between my legs, pushing his fingers into me and spreading the natural lubrication, he rubbed hard circles into my most sensitive skin, alternating pumping and rubbing. My hips frantically grinding into his hand, as soft bands fell from my lips. I was burning and writhing, my body desperate for the orgasm now, when suddenly, Edward stopped. I brought myself to rest on my elbows, the moonlight casting interesting patterns across his face as his eyes roamed my body. "What's wrong?" I asked breathlessly, frantic for him to continue.
"Bella, I'm going to taste you now,"
he said calmly, and my chest heaved in anticipation as I saw him lower his pretty face. His mouth gently kissed the inside of my thighs, and his thumbs gripped my legs as his lips moved closer and closer, hesitating a moment, before slowly plunging his tongue into me. I groaned at the contact, my toes and fingers tingling with the impending euphoria. As he quickened his movements, sucking and plunging, his tongue delicately attended to the swollen skin. My legs quivered as they rested on his shoulders, my thighs pressed against his face. The speed of his tongue increased, causing my hips to rise from the bed, using my hands against the wall behind me as leverage, pushing myself closer to his face, grabbing my thighs and pinning me to his mouth, I was unable to move, the loss of control forcing me into orgasmic bliss, the burst of sweet relief spiraling through me as I writhed against his mouth in ecstasy. My chest heaved and I sat up, pulling his lips to mine, and tasting my fluid upon his mouth, as he kissed me feverishly and I moved my hands to his waistband. Pulling his mouth from mine, he grabbed my hands instead. He sat beside me as I stared at him in confusion. This was not expected and I was utterly perplexed as to the reason behind his hesitation.
"I can't, Bella. Not now,"
he said, his hands rubbing at his eyes now. He must be tired, the ordeal with his sister pressing in his awareness, and I nodded in understanding. He placed his long fingers around my hand, bringing it to his lips, and inhaling softly with a gentle press into my fingers.
"I have to go now, love. I'll see you soon, I promise."
Turning to leave, he climbed back out the window, and lithely perched on the roof. I leaned out the window, fear now clouding my initial euphoria. It was pretty standard for Edward to leave quickly after consummation, but still, this was a bit abrupt. I still felt the residual ache between my thighs and I couldn't help but feel a bit insecure about the situation. "Edward," I said, stopping him as he was about to climb down. He looked at me with wide, questioning eyes and I quickly voiced the words I had been unable to say the night before. "I love you, Edward."
"I know."
A slow, sad smile crept across his mouth, the shadows of dancing leaves strewn across his angelic face. He swiftly climbed down the large tree outside my window, and was on the ground in a heartbeat, his face peering up at me through the darkness, and I hoped, for the sake of his already damaged soul, that Alice soon returned. I woke up the next morning startled and dazed, a dozen eerie dreams fading into incoherency as I became fully conscious. I checked my cell phone for any messages, hoping to see some news about Alice, but there was nothing, no messages, no missed calls, nothing. I got dressed quickly, pulling on a red V-neck sweater and jeans, and brushed my hair back into a long ponytail. My mom was in the living room, passed out on the couch. Picking up her empty bottles, I could smell the whiskey that exuded from her pores as it filled the room with a pungent aroma. The television set was still blaring. The news reporting a missing person, and I stopped to listen to the newscaster in case the report had information pertaining to Alice.
College student Jasper Whitlock has been missing since Monday. Sources say he went to bar Monday night and never returned. If you have any information regarding his whereabouts, please contact the Forks Police Department.
The announcer read off the numbers as I glanced at the screen, a familiar face flashing across it. I recognized the blonde beauty at once, his sly smile lighting up the screen. My heart started to pound in my chest as I went over the details of the report. He'd been missing since Monday. Monday, the same day he was trimming the roses, the same day Alice had fired him for smiling at me. Monday, the same day that Alice had disappeared. Could this just be some freak coincidence, or was this all connected? It was evident Alice had a relationship beyond business with this man, Jasper. Could she have run off with him? I was still considering the implications of this new information when I heard a knock at the door. Edward was on my porch wearing the same white collared shirt he had worn last night. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept, dark encircling his eyes, his lips a taut line of distress. "Edward." I greeted him in surprise. I usually met Edward at school. "Is everything okay? Any news?" He shook his head no. I didn't know which question he was answering, so I just wrapped my arms around his neck, bringing my lips to his as his long arms wrapped around my waist and pulled me into a tight embrace. My body pressed against him, his tongue mixed with mine, and I couldn't breathe. I tried to pull away, but his hand moved to the back of my head, holding my face to his and blocking my airway. I started to panic, trying to voice the words and uselessly calling his name. I mumbled for him to stop as his tongue forced its way into my mouth, his fleshy lips overtaking mine and causing my head to spin. I used my hands to push him away, my fists clutching his shirt and pounding into his chest. Finally, as white flashes of light began to invade my vision, he pulled away, both of us panting, and I stumbled to the ground.